So today we are come together for a historic day. Today we gather to honor 50 years of Pride. Yes, 50 years. This anniversary was hard fought, from the days of the Freedom Parade to Compton's cafeteria riots to all the work across this country that we continue to do for our freedom. And if we look at this year alone, we remember that our theme of this year's Pride is Generations of Hope. And we look to the future because in the next 50 years, we have a lot to be hopeful for. We look at our past and we remember what we've accomplished, from marriage equality to celebrating that marvelous day here in this City Hall when the first couple was married. We honor and recognize the protections of trans people and LGBT folks across the city, thanks to the leadership of the Board of Supervisors and all of our elected officials. We remember the work that we still have to do across the country as trans kids are being refused access to bathrooms in our schools. We remember the families that stand up for them, and we remember the work that we still have to do. Because this generation is hopeful. This generation will continue to be hopeful. And there's so many reasons why we have this hope. Some of that comes from our elected officials, some of that comes from our own journeys. But we know we cannot do this work without the leadership in our city. And I am so proud to work for a leader in this amazing city who has not only spearheaded the work of so many of us and supported so much of LGBT equality here in San Francisco, but it also is continuing that effort forward. Our mayor, Mayor London Breed.
First of all, thank you, Claire. Thank you to the official band of San Francisco, the Lesbian Gay Freedom Band. Thank you to SF Pride, and thank you to Supervisor Mandelman and so many elected leaders and department heads here in San Francisco to celebrate the beginning of Pride in San Francisco, 50 years of what I think has been an amazing accomplishment. So thank you to the board members, to the president, Carolyn. Thank you to our new executive director. Like, so many great things are happening in this city, and so many great things are happening with Pride. And I know I get really excited because even though it's February and we are not expected to have a number of activities, especially the parade, until June, it's going to be so exciting that we had to announce it right now. We had to get everybody excited about what's to come, because there is nothing that we do better than celebrate in San Francisco. We celebrate our history, we celebrate our diversity, we celebrate what makes San Francisco so unique. And we know that in this city was the epicenter of what has occurred that has led to so much to support our LGBT community. And I'm really proud to be in a position as mayor to help support and carry on some of the many policies that we know are necessary to continue to make sure that there is hope for future generations. In fact, Trans Home SF has been an amazing accomplishment in this city, and thank you, Tony Newman, for your leadership. We got one of our first buildings, and there's more to come, along with wraparound supportive services for our trans seniors. We know this work is critical. And in San Francisco, we do celebrate a record low of new HIV infections, less than 200 last year. And thank you, Dr. Grant Colfax, for your leadership with the Department of Public Health. We will continue to make sure that we make those investments to get to zero. We just acquired a new building that will help transitional age youth, and we know that we did the count around homeless youth. About 50% of the youth that are homeless in this city identify as LGBT, and we want to make sure that we're doing more to help the next generation of young people growing up in this community so that they truly have hope. So many great things, but also so much more work to do. And I am really confident in the leadership of this city to really help us move forward on so many different levels. As we think about just the attacks that we have been under, I mean, we just had a visit from the other number 45 here this weekend, and I can't help but think about not only our city being under attack, but also our LGBT community, where we continue to fight for things that we shouldn't have to at this point. You know, when I think about just what we're celebrating in the month of February, Black History Month. Black history is American history. We're celebrating Lunar New Year. Chinese American history is American history. LGBT history is American history. We are all a part of the fabric of what makes our city and our country so great. So we will not be silenced. We will continue to lift our voices and celebrate what makes us so great, what makes us so unique. And during the month of Pride, we will just do it with that much more flair. So thank you all so much for being here. 50 years, here's to 50 more incredible years in the future for future generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Breed. And one other note I'm just so proud of, thanks to the mayor's leadership, we've invested recently over $1 million over the next year into trans seniors. So thank you to the Department of Aging and Adult Service, Shireen, and all the leadership of our city to make sure those that brought us to this 50 years continue to be celebrated and can continue to thrive in place. So now I'd like to introduce a leader who we know will continue to take Pride forward in the next 50 years, our new Director of Pride, Fred Lopez. Welcome, Fred.
Hi, good morning, everybody. How are you? Good. Excited? SF Pride, hashtag SF Pride 50. Thank you all so much for coming to San Francisco Pride's 50th anniversary kickoff announcement. Before anything else, I just want to convey our sincerest gratitude to the mayor, to Supervisor Mandelman, and all these amazing elected officials up here for coming out today to start the celebration right. Every city department that is present, we want to thank you for your unwavering support for San Francisco's largest annual outdoor event. It may cost over $3 million to produce, but it wouldn't happen at all without the amazing coordination of this many departments, institutions, sponsors, and of course our community members, partners, and volunteers.
Yay to the volunteers.
Right? Yeah, exactly. As Claire said, the theme for San Francisco Pride this year, Pride 50, is Generations of Hope. And it's the culmination of a 3-year theme of generations that was originally suggested by Pride member Larry Nelson. That spirit of hope will become visible at the beginning of June when the rainbow flags go up along Market Street. Much of Market Street now newly car-free, right? On Saturday, June 27th, Civic Center will once again become a site of celebration, home to more than 20 community programs, stages, and venues. All weekend, with crowds in the tens of thousands we're expecting. It's going to be a big year. We're excited for it. Then, as Claire also mentioned, for many of us, what is the centerpiece of Pride, the parade and march steps off at 10:30 a.m. on Sunday, June 28th. As is tradition, the Dykes on Bikes will roar and be super loud and visible, and they'll lead the parade's more than 275 contingents from the Embarcadero to Civic Center, with 50,000 marchers expected to be in the parade, all cheered on by more than 100,000 spectators. It's going to be quite a spectacle this year. If your organization or group is thinking about marching, we encourage you to register soon, because we think the parade might run out of space earlier than it has in the years past. So that's great. For the past 2 years, our media partners at CBS Bay Area have live streamed the parade so that people from around the world can see the spectacle that is San Francisco Pride. This year, we're delighted to announce that in addition to the usual live stream, KPIX will broadcast the parade live on Sunday, June 28th. So wear something cute and call your moms, because you're going to be on TV. That's exciting. Thank you to our friends at KPIX. That's not the only new development for 2020. On April 17th, an exhibition entitled Labor of Love, The Birth of San Francisco Pride, 1970 to 1980, opens at the GLBT History Museum in the Castro. It's a collaboration between Pride and the GLBT Historical Society, and it'll be up in the museum until January 2021. Further, starting May 7th, right here in City Hall in the North Light Court, the Historical Society and San Francisco Arts Commission will mount a photography exhibition called 50 Years of Pride. So make sure to come to City Hall and check out the amazing history that we can learn from. Our entire team at San Francisco Pride is working hard to ensure that we are ready for this monumental event. And here are some ways in which our communities can help. Applications are now open for Pride's community partners who provide the invaluable volunteer power during Pride weekend. And the public has until March 10th to vote for this year's individual and organizational community grand marshals at sfpride.org. I want to acknowledge that in this room there are some former community grand marshals and honorees, like our board president, Carolyn, was once an honoree, and there's some others. So if you want to raise your hand to folks who have been honored in the past. Thank you for all of your tireless work. That spirit of tireless volunteerism and service is at the core of San Francisco Pride, and that commitment goes both ways. In 2019, we were pleased to donate more than $203,000 to over 40 Bay Area nonprofits, which adds to our ongoing total of more than $3 million since 1997. Finally, 2020 may be the 50th anniversary of San Francisco Pride as a march and a demonstration and a celebration, but San Francisco's LGBTQ history began well before 1970 and what was then called Gay Freedom Day. The Compton's cafeteria riot took place in August 1966, as we know, almost 3 years before Stonewall, and the city has always been a pioneer in equal rights legislation and public health programming battling HIV and AIDS. As we look forward to the next 50 years, let's always remember the valiant struggles of previous generations, people who fought to get us here and never lost hope. As Harvey Milk said, you gotta give them hope. And with your support here at San Francisco Pride, we always will. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fred. We're so excited, and we know that Pride is in great hands. Thank you. So now it's my honor to introduce our new Pride Board Chair, Carolyn Weisinger.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Mayor Breed. Thank you to all you that are joining us here today, especially my aunts who threaten me bodily harm if I don't mention them. It's my honor to be your Pride 50 board president. And as Fred mentioned, the board is excited about completing our 3-year theme with this year's Generations of Hope. While we're excited about the events leading up to the Pride weekend, we are most excited about what that word hope represents. As a community, we are in challenging times, and Pride is no different. I like to say that being around 50 years represents the fact that there is more that is required of us. Not just as a board, but supporting agencies, supporting organizations, and supporting officials. There is more required now that we are headed into 50. The organizational needs aren't the same as they were in 1970, and neither are the needs of the community that we represent. There is more required in the way that we represent community, there is more required in the way that we support our community, and there is more required in the way that we are supported. Now, the last leg to 50 is always the hardest leg. Some of you may have been married 50 years and you know it's hard getting to 50. It doesn't get easier as we march in these last months to 50. As someone who grew up in a church that's now 75 years old, I remember 1995 and how hard that last road to 50 was. I remember the struggle, I remember the squabbles, and I remember the days that it seemed like it would all fall apart. We are in that crunch time now. But we as a board continue to believe in the importance of having a celebration that is reflective of the community that we serve, is reflective of all of their voices, and we try to do our hardest to make visible all of those voices. Now, Fred did mention when Supervisor Harvey Milk said that we have to give them hope, but like I said, my board knows that I don't make any decision without first referring to the church. And I remember when Bishop Carlton Pearson said we have to remind them of the hope. So that's what we seek to do this year at Pride 50, and we look forward to you joining us for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So 2020 is kind of an incredible year, right? Not only is it the 50th anniversary, but also we need to get out the vote. And every one of you matter, so let's remember to get out there and do that. So now it's my honor to introduce our only out gay supervisor, who has been doing some incredible work, not only in his district, but for the LGBT community at large and San Francisco at large. Please welcome Supervisor Rafael Mandelman.
Good morning, everybody. It does, February does feel like a slightly odd time to be celebrating Pride, but I will say there's never a bad opportunity for the queer community to take the mayor's balcony. So we are happy to be here. And Madam Mayor, I think it is just worth noting the extraordinary collection of queer department heads you have, from Claire Farley at OTI to Janine Nicholson at the Fire Department, and Grant Colfax, the Department of Public Health, and Jeffrey Tumlin, my constituent over there at MTA, and Shireen McSpadden at Aging and Adult Services. And I know I'm leaving off a whole ton of people, but you have a very queer administration, and we are quite appreciative of that. The trustees never get acknowledged, so I'm going to acknowledge them now. We have our past president, Alex Randolph of the College Board, and our current vice president, Tom Temprano of the College Board, doing great and important work. And then I also do want to congratulate Fred Lopez. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you to the whole board. Pride has never been easy, but it is important. And so this year is particularly important and seems to be particularly challenging, and I know you will get through it, and we are grateful for what you are doing to get us through what will be a amazing 50-year celebration. So thank you. I was trying to think earlier today about, for that 1970 Gay In, the people who participated in that, what would they have imagined the next 50 years would be like? And, would they have imagined that in just a few years a gay man would get elected as supervisor in San Francisco? And would they imagine that over the decades after that, rainbow wave after rainbow wave would come crashing throughout the land until this last 2018 election, when we got an unprecedented number of gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender folks elected, even in places like Virginia? That is extraordinary. They would not have imagined that AIDS and HIV were coming, and nor would they have imagined the extraordinary community response that would come to it. This is an extraordinarily queer day. Tom and I were just over at the airport where the quilt is getting brought from Atlanta and is finally coming home, and there's going to be a fantastic rollout of panels from the last 10 years in Golden Gate Park on April 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and everybody should come. But the resilience of the queer community in responding to that crisis and building a civil rights movement, they would have had no idea. And would they have imagined same-sex marriage? Would they, however you feel about Pete Buttigieg, would they have imagined that a gay man would be one of the leading candidates for president in this year? Would they imagine that we would have corporate CEOs, and that so much of what they probably wouldn't have imagined would come to pass? So it has been an extraordinary 50 years. I don't imagine that they would have imagined that the mayor of San Francisco would be an African-American woman who grew up in the projects. And I do think that they would be particularly amazed and delighted at that prospect, because Harvey Milk talked about the us's and the coalition of folks who had been left out of the power structure before the 70s, and who just in the 70s were beginning to imagine that there might be a universe where they could take power. And so it is pretty amazing with our queer department heads and our African-American woman mayor. San Francisco is living up to the dreams of 50 years ago, I think. Generations of Hope is an amazingly appropriate way of viewing this year, and I feel like I generationally have benefited so much. And in a lot of ways, the work now is about building, acknowledging the institutions like the Lesbian Gay Freedom Band, which our mayor did last year. And
well, you did.
Well, we did, and then she signed, then I got a pen out of it. But you know, that was a great moment for the city. But some of the other fantastic moments, getting that second building at open house and now having purchased a third potential site for LGBT affirming senior housing. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for that. You know, there's just around the corner from there, the Gay Men's Chorus, another 70s cultural institution, has bought a building and is becoming the National LGBTQ Center for the Arts, and we got some help for them into the budget last year. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, thank you to my colleagues on the board. We have inherited so much, and so going forward, I think, you know, obviously the obligation is to build on that and also to recognize the unfulfilled promises. In 1970, they knew that trans folks had been left behind, and in 2020, we know that trans folks have been left behind, and so we need to build on our Trans Home SF and do many more times that, and we need to eradicate the epidemic. We need to finally do the work of getting to zero, and to do that, we have to go into communities of color and reach folks who have not been reached, and that's how that's going to work. And so the work of justice, which they knew we needed to do in 1970 and 80 and 90, and since we really have to do now, and that is the work of the next 50 years. So it's exciting. I'm excited to be part of this. Thank you. I think now Fred Lopez is going to come back.
Thank you. That's a great way to sort of summarize all the amazing things that are happening in San Francisco. We are so incredibly fortunate to live in this amazing place and being supported by all of these people and all of these institutions that surround us. I do want to say really quickly that I want to make sure that I acknowledge the board members from San Francisco Pride who are here. Give us a wave. And San Francisco Pride wouldn't happen without, obviously, the hundreds of volunteers, as well as a really talented team of contractors and staff. If you're on contractor or staff team, give us a wave. Great work. Finally, as Rafael said, you know, it is a little early. Usually we have a lot of things to say about all the amazing talent and entertainment and speakers that we're going to have on our stages. We don't have all that settled just yet, but we're working hard every day to make sure that that stuff is coming along. And so stay tuned. Visit our website at sfpride.org to learn more. And if you want to get involved, feel free to send us an email, find our newsletter, sign up on the website. But honestly, we're just here to say that we're excited. We're working hard to make sure that Pride 50 is going to be a spectacle that won't be forgotten soon. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for coming and hand it back to the Lesbian and Gay Freedom Band to send us out for the morning. Thank you again.